and that way we'll go ahead and get started. I was a high school teacher for 20 plus years, and I know a lot of presenters say, hold your questions till the end and things like that. I'm not one of those people, so if you have a question or things like that, please feel free to go ahead. And I'm used, like I said, I was a high school teacher. I was used to being interrupted, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, so if you want to do that and things like that, we'll address them as we go. That way you don't have to remember until the very end and remember what that might be. So we are not here to change your mind. We're not here to make you a believer. We are not here to, convince you of anything. This is just basically what we have experienced and what we experience on a monthly basis, sometimes multiple times a week, sometimes nothing for a week. So it's completely random, and we'll kind of go through. We'll show you some of that evidence, and talk about some of our experiences. Like I said, I know some of our volunteers have experiences as well. You can seek them out afterwards and ask them if they have something and things like that. Because as much as I work with them on a daily basis, I still hear stories, that I was like, that's the first time I've heard it, even though, we've been doing this. So those things still come out and things of that sort. So, but like I said, we're not here to prove you to the belief of ghosts or spirits or whatever. We can't prove that they exist, but yet, as of yet, nobody can prove that they don't exist either. So until that can be definitively taken care of, which I hope is not for a long time, because then we can continue to have events like this, especially if the answer is that's not true. And then if that's the case, then I don't know what's been going on around here, because it occurs a lot. So we'll start off with a little bit of history about the family that lived here, that we gave the name of the museum for, and things of that, and a little bit of history of house. And for that, I'm going to turn that over to Diane.
Okay, so the Benninghofen house was built between 1861 and 1863. The Benninghofens were not the first residents. The first residents were the McFarland family. And during the process of the construction of the house, his first wife passed away, so that could be a reason for why it took so long to get the house done. So she did die here in the house. Then they were here for 6 years. They moved out in 1868, and then the Phillips family moved in. And if you've been in the house, you'll see the elaborate plasterwork that can be attributed to the Phillips family. And one of the mediums that comes in, she has seen in one of the bedrooms, when she walked in there, she had a vision of a woman in the middle of childbirth. So Mrs. Phillips did give birth to her sixth child here in the house, so it's a possibility that that is what the medium is seeing. They moved out in 1874. That is when the Benninghofen family moved in, and they lived here the longest amount of time, so that's why we call this the Benninghofen house. And the last of their descendants lived here until 1947, and she left the house to the Historical Society. So items or hauntings can come from items or people. So over the years, we have acquired a lot of items. So some of the entities that are picked up on in the house could be attached to the items that we have here, but we do know some of the mediums have picked up actual family members.
Right. So we have a lot of people that have sensitivities that are what I would call professional, because they use those for professional purposes, whether it's readings or things like that. But a lot of people just come through. The general consensus among those individuals is that everyone has some ability for some of those extrasensory perceptions. It's just that some people, it's like anything else. Some people are amazing athletes, but yet, there are other people who play, weekend softball or whatever, or even less occasionally, but they can still participate. They're just not a professional at it. So The belief is that everybody has these abilities. Sometimes it takes just an attuning to that or an awareness of that. And sometimes it's actually just thrust upon you and you have no control over it. But we have people come through the house a lot, especially if we put a new exhibit up. And if it's, with clothing or something like that, like when we do our wedding dress exhibit a few years ago, we had numerous mediums come in and want to see what they could pick up off of the dresses and things like that. So, there are things like that. We do have events here that we ticket and schedule, where we have investigations or we invite the public to come in, purchase a ticket, and we have an investigative group that kind of runs an investigation, around that. But we also have lots of groups that come in privately, and some of the evidence you're going to see today is from private people. So they come in, we rent the house out to them, and if it's a couple people, it's more. If you bring 5 people, it's less. If you bring 10 people, it's less. So that's kind of how that works. So we do have those kind of people, what I would call amateur investigators and things like that. So we used to do about a couple things a year. We didn't do anything this year. We try to not overpower it and make it, because it seems to have some effect. But I would generally say that activity in the household in the last couple years, year and a half, has spiked. I think it's more prevalent. I've been involved with the organization for about 10 years. Diane's been here for about a year and a half to 2 years. And I would say there's been a definite uptick in activity. And I think some of that is because of some of the exhibits that we've had. And we'll talk about one of those here at the end. But this is the second generation of the family. So John and Wilhelmina Benninghofen were the husband and wife, the mom and the father, and things like that. So, John Benninghofen passes in the late 1880s. Or in the 1880s. Wilhelmina will pass in 1891. So we know of 3 deaths that actually have occurred within that family here. So John, Wilhelmina, and as you can see, their oldest daughter, who's also named Wilhelmina, she will pass in the house in 1892 of a fever. We don't know where that is in the house or what room upstairs that occurred in or downstairs, but there is a room upstairs where the majority, some like people in the public, it's, you go and it's like, people get really flushed, really feverish, hot, and it's the same room that's the room that makes most people nauseous. So we, what we do, and not everyone obviously, but a lot of people, what we do is we try to connect the dots the best we can, and that's how we come up with our theories, and that's what they are, they're theories. Like I said, we can't prove anything. We can only go by what we've been told by multiple mediums, and basically it's this theory of repetition. If you have multiple mediums come in over multiple years or several years or decades, and you start getting the same information from those people, then you kind of put some credence to that, or at least I do personally, all right? Now, the idea of, and maybe all of these mediums have some kind of network where they just kind of say, hey, if you go here, say this. I doubt that. It's possible, I'm sure. But the 2 family members, so as Diane mentioned, so we've been told over the past couple of decades that we have anywhere between 10 and 14 visitors at the facility at any given time. Some of them are here apparently all the time, others come and go. All right, and how that happens, I couldn't tell you, but that's just what we've been told, and things of that sort. So the 2 family members that have been known to be here at the home is Wilhelmina Benninghofen, we'll talk about her later, the mother of the home, and Peter Benninghofen, who was the 3rd child, the 2nd son. And things of that sort. Now, Pauline Benninghofen and Carrie Benninghofen, they lived here for several decades together after their 2 brothers had moved out and their sister had passed away. They eventually had some live-in help that lived with them for about 20 plus years. But yeah, neither of them married. They kind of lived together. And Pauline is the one who actually willed the home to the Historical Society when she passed in 1947. That's and the Benninghofens were very instrumental in business. Their father John was half of the Schuler Benninghofen woolen mill on Pleasant Avenue in Lindenwold. That factory still stands. Matter of fact, it's going to be turned into a mixed-use development here over the next couple years. They've actually started cleaning that place out about a month ago. getting that ready for that rehabilitation. But they also ran Crowther Benninghofen, which was a metal shaping company. They made music stands, Hamilton music stands, Autographic Register Company, which was a company that manufactured early receipt machines. They were part of that. Peter and Christian brought the first streetcars to Lindenwold. There's the Benninghofen Street over there is named after them. Benninghofen Park was over there for a while. So, and Peter was an executive for a bank and some other businesses. So they were very much in tune with Hamilton business. So we're going to start off with the formal parlor, which is the traditional female space. We're talking, the Benninghofens were upper middle class. They were fairly wealthy. Now, when I say, and they got that home at a sheriff's auction. As Diane mentioned, the Phillips brought in all the craftsmen from Germany to do the plaster work and all the wood carving and things like that. Well, it bankrupted them. They couldn't afford it. Plus, Mr. Phillips had a bad habit of not paying his taxes. So that was a problem. So in 1873, the Benninghofens buy that home for $14,700. Which in today's equivalent is about $800,000. So not the most elaborate, expensive home in the area, especially when you're looking, but at that time period. But they were still very well to do. And they made good money off of that woolen mill. Not so much from wool blankets or coats or things like that, but when the paper mills came in and needed huge rolls of felt for the pulp, to work with the pulp, that's where they made their money. So after events, whether it be formal gatherings or things like that, the women will retire to the formal parlor, stereotypically or traditionally, and do those kind of feminine things like sewing or play music or, talking or whatever it might be, things of that sort. So, but this was also the main entertainment room for the house. So, but we know, or we've been told by multiple people on multiple occasions, that this is the main room where the two family members that hang out between Wilhelmina and Peter, that Wilhelmina hangs out here most of the time. She will also kind of go to the dining room on certain occasions. A lot of the spirits are not mobile. They're always in one spot, and no matter when you come, what time of day, or whoever sees them, whatever day they're here, as far as mediums go, or just other people with senses, it's always the same place. So we have some people, some other spirits in the house that basically stay in one spot. And we'll talk about some of those people as well. Wilhelmina has the ability she basically bounces back and forth, spends most of her time in the parlor, but sometimes she can be found in the dining room. And things of that sort. So we're going to show you some examples of some things that have been caught here. Now, a variety of tools are used, and we talked about having those out, and then we decided it's too much of a distraction and things. But sensing devices or methods can go anywhere from just personal, so just feelings that people get. Obviously, if we have mediums come in, and again, there's a wide range of abilities for mediums, and there's a wide range of types of mediums. If you're clairvoyant, you see things. If you're empathic, you don't necessarily see things, but you feel emotions. So you can feel someone's pain, you can feel someone's sadness, you can feel someone's joy, those kind of things. But we have all types of senses that we've experienced here, just even ourselves, right? We hear things all the time. As a matter of fact, the big joke is now, which if we had to have a motto for the Historical Society, it would be, "Did you hear that?" Stuff like that. So we have those things. Smells are starting to become more prevalent that we've kind of noticed, at least in my experience here. And we'll talk about some of those things. And then there's the tactile stuff. So recently, Diane's very first week here, she had an experience. I just had an experience last week. So some of the stuff that we're going to talk about is not even 7 days old. And this and that. But so this is a couple things that we're going to talk about that happened in the formal parlor. So how many people here watch the ghost shows, or those kind of things, Ghost Hunters or Ghost Adventures? Okay. So some of the things we're going to talk about. So this is actually a screen from an SLS camera. And SLS stands for Structured Light Sensor. And it was actually a piece of Xbox equipment that was developed for video gaming that, and as with a lot of ghost hunting equipment, it has another function, or had an original function, and somebody has then taken it and basically used that now for their devices or for their purposes. So you have, the Xbox technology was you have a bar, it shoots out all of these little laser beam lights, and the purpose was originally to create the movement on screen for game characters of what is mirroring what you as an actual person were doing. So you would set that bar on your TV, shoot it back at you, and if you were standing in front of it and raised your arm, the character on the screen would raise its arm. If you did, all these things, so, it's very similar to if you were familiar with Wii's, where you were actually swinging the Wii controller and things like that. That was more motion sensitive, but this is actually a light thing. So what the SLS does is, because it shoots out the beams, they hit something and they bounce back. Now, obviously, you can get false readings with this, especially if you have something that kind of resembles. But the theory is that when those laser beams hit something, whether it be energy or to use terms like mist or cloud or whatever that might be, that's kind of the situation. There are some empty seats. I don't know if there's anything together. There's 3 down here. There's a couple over there. So yeah, come on in. So when the laser beams hit something and bounce back, what it does is, again, it will create this structure that looks like a stick person. All right, even though what is actually bouncing back may be some kind of amorphous mist blob, it's something that you can't even see. But something is sending those beams back to give it that shape. All right, so whatever that might be. So that's how the technology works in a nutshell. I can't get much more technical than that because it's not, I don't really know. But I do know that this actually is the reverse. So what you see on the screen is actually a reverse in real life. So you're going to see this figure over here appears to be on the left-hand side of this screen. But in reality, this is the area of the room that we're looking at. So there's a settee, there's a chair, and then there's a table. And you're going to see, at times, right now you can't see it, but you're going to be able to eventually see the actual items in the background of this screen. All right, this is more of like a thermal-based thing. So again, you can kind of see, but there again, there's the chair, all right, and so forth. So you're going to see this smallish figure, from what we could gather, about 3 feet tall. And we've been told there is, we know that there are children in the home. We also know that we have an unidentified young boy. And as of yet, he's not been able to be identified. We think this is him, just based on what it does, or what he does. We don't think this is one of the little girls, because you're going to see him do very boy-like things. You're going to actually see him climb up on the objects and eventually plop himself on that table and put his hand down on the book and kind of sit there and dangle his leg off at an angle. At least that's how I perceive it. So we'll go ahead and play this. And there is no sound to this video, but again, so watch the green figure there. And again, you'll see him climb up the settee, hop onto the chair, and hop up onto the table. Okay. And I'll tell you why it's really jerky. So again, why that's jerky and why it's all is because, again, the light is basically bouncing back at real time. And if whatever that shape is doesn't have solid edges, or it's going to give that impression of that jerkiness, right? So the lights are trying to basically gauge what the actual shape is, but because there is no actual shape, that's why that is that's why that's happening, or that's the theory of why that's happening. Now this image over here, that is of Wilhelmina, supposedly sitting in the chair, and I'll turn that over to Diane, because this is one of her first experiences, I believe.
Yeah, so Brian likes to say that he was a skeptical believer when he got involved here. I was not so skeptic. I grew up in a house that was built in 1856. I always had experiences, I thought everybody had experiences, that they felt like somebody was with them or would see things out of the corner of their eye or smell random cigar smoke. Wasn't until after I got married and moved out and wasn't having those experiences anymore that I realized, oh, that doesn't happen to everyone. So, but when I started here in the summer of 24, I had never done a formal paranormal investigation. So my first experience with a formal investigation was last October. I had the chance to do 2 of them in the month of October. So some of these videos were from those 2 investigations. So I was able to see Wilhelmina sitting in her chair, and I perceive her as sewing. That's actually going to be on the next slide, but this was my experience meeting Wilhelmina for the first time.
So she hangs out in this chair, and we have actually had experiences where we can actually have, and we'll see some examples where you actually see an actual person in the same shot, and you can clearly tell there's a distinct difference between an actual person and not. But we have actually, when she's in the chair, or sometimes she's in the settee, we will have folks go sit on the floor by her, lift their hand up and basically ask, can you reach out and touch their hand? And you see the figure actually do that. We don't have any. We have a limited example of things, but I have seen that on a few investigations. So again, this is her sitting in the chair there, and eventually you'll see the legs cross. And things of that sort. So, and that's usually the chair where she hangs out. And she's been sensed there. She's been caught by equipment there, and things of else, and so forth. So that's pretty much where kind of she hangs out. So now this slide here, this is actually the example that Diane was referring to. So if you watch, pretty much the only thing that's moving a lot in this whole thing is going to be this arm and this hand here, and again, the investigators are trying to make some sense of that, and they came up with the possibility of, does she appear to be sewing? So it'll start off silent, but eventually the voices will kick in, and so forth. So. Now, could that also be, again, that whole phenomena that I was describing as far as the jerkiness of the motion? Possibly. But for the most part, the rest of the figure is pretty still.
Something? It does look like that, doesn't it?
So again, and obviously we have a lot more of these things, but for the sake of this presentation, we try to keep everything down to 20 seconds or 30 seconds. So, I mean, some of these clips are actually, 2 to 3 minutes long. Some of them are even longer. But if you can get something to be in a screen like that for more than a couple minutes, and we're going to see some examples where they'll be there and all of a sudden, poop, they're not, and so forth. So, we're going to go to the main hallway here. So this is where that unlearned little boy has been perceived several times. We actually caught some very good SLS kind of images of him sitting on this chair here, but mediums have said he kind of just goes up and down this hallway. And then this was actually during an investigation. This was actually filmed by myself. So we were getting ready to do an investigation probably a couple years ago, and I had taken the SLS camera down this hallway and around and pointed it down this. There's another small hallway around the corner that goes to a bathroom that we don't use. So I just took it down there to make sure everything was on and everything was running, and I was talking to somebody, and I happened to look back at the screen, and this is what was on the screen. So again, the very jerky motion, and people are like, oh, it looks like he's dancing. He's probably not dancing. Maybe he is. But again, it's definitely a shorter, smaller, not an adult figure. So again, and it's very bizarre to be looking at the screen and seeing this thing, but when you look, in reality, then there's nothing down there. And like I said, sometimes you get false results. If something, is like if you have I know I've seen vacuum cleaners that are, and they will give a false result, or halt trees. But there's absolutely nothing in this hallway except the door at the end. So. And I've been on other investigations where you've used this device and you actually see that the thing is actually not on the floor, that the feet are actually off of the floor. And there's a plain wall behind. We did one at the hub and it was just, so again, you can't 100% put your faith in any of this equipment, but when you see things that happen on a consistent basis at the same place, like I said, that repetition is about the only way that you can start to not prove, but create something that seems to be plausible. Obviously, if you can repeat that over and over and over again, that helps. So we're going to go across the hallway into the library. The library is a traditionally male space, so when the women would go to the formal parlor and do their thing after some kind of formal dinner or event, the men would go to the library and do that stereotypical, drink their brandy or their drinks, smoke their cigars, their pipes, and those kind of things. And we've been told that there used to be two entities in this library on a regular basis. One was General Ferdinand Vanderveer. We'll talk about him later. He has actually shifted location in the facility, and we'll talk about why that's happened. The other is Peter Benninghofen, who is that third child, second son of the Benninghofens. Why he has come back to this place, that's another theory, right? As she said, there are various reasons why an entity or a spirit might be around. A lot of the times we've been told they're here because they're attached to an object that's been donated here, and we'll talk about some of that. But Peter spent most of his life here, a large portion of it. So did he just come back because it's comfortable, or whomever knows? Or is there something here that he's attached to besides the house? Is there some other object? Perhaps one of those books have been in there a long time. We don't know a whole lot of history about them, but possibly there's something around in the area. So that's him. So I'm going to turn it back over to Diane because these videos were both taken by her. And so let her describe that. So again, this is going to be the settee, one of those settees, and I think it's the green one that you saw in the previous shot. And again, there's clearly a figure. That's actually me. So this is what a real figure looks like. So an actual person, you can kind of you see the outline of the person, right? The machine there, the device also then creates the stick figure with it. But, so you can see the difference of, this is the outline of the end of the chair. Somebody is sitting in there. Their one leg seems to be cocked over the edge or whatever that might be. And you're going to see me moving things like that. And then in actuality, the next one is kind of the same situation, but these were taken at different days, about a week or so apart. So
so the video on the left-hand side of the screen there, so that was the first formal investigation that I had been on. And this original clip goes for over 7 minutes. So we were interacting with this figure for quite a while. So we had Brian in the room and we're basically directing him like, okay, take a step over, now move your hand down. And as we're directing him to move his hand down, when he gets to what would be the head of the figure, you could actually see the figure move away from his hand. So it was like he was actually like pushing on the entity, or the entity was trying to move away from him to avoid being touched.
Standing next to him.
Right.
Yeah, so right, we've never seen that before, so it wouldn't be residual anyhow.
That voice is Matt Neubauer. He's a member of SRPI. They're the resident investigative group that we have come in.
This is bizarre.
What better way to spend the afterlife, though? Just sit around all day and,
Oh, sorry. Oh, Brian, you looked confrontational there. Whoa. Sorry. What are you doing?
He's trying to get closer to it.
I don't think you want to. Yeah.
Ever put a ball down for the smaller one?
Yeah. Now
That
it
has
looks
happened
like
in the
he's
past.
like-
Yeah, that's usually upstairs.
Whoa, now he's like collapsing onto himself.
But I'll talk
It's
about that
looking
too.
really
Yeah.
Weird.
No.
No longer looking like a stick figure.
Now, The second clip is different because you're going to actually have a very good clairvoyant medium come into the shot. And yeah, she's clearly she has abilities I do not have. So what happens if I actually come over here and sit down?
I was gonna say,
So we saw eventually, eventually it disappeared. It went away when I did sit down next to it. But there have been investigations where, again, it's a fairly regular occurrence, and it seems to be when it's males. So we've actually had people sit in that settee, and the figure will show up and sit there as well, and things of that sort. Usually, if we try to do that with ladies, there's no activity. He doesn't show up. Now, whether that's again, that's a traditionally male space. Is that something to do with it? Who knows? But that's kind of the thing. But most of the occurrences or the appearances have to be usually when there's a male sitting there, which actually leads to our next clip because that's the same situation.
Yeah, so the second clip was about 2 weeks later from the second investigation, and we're trying to recreate, get the same result. So we actually put my son in there, so he's sitting on the settee. He's actually in the room today.
That's right. So if you have questions afterwards,
Yeah.
see Derek.
So you'll kind of hear him explaining, this is kind of the tail end of our activity that we were picking up. Again, this was probably at least a 5-minute clip that we cut down, and it's just the very end of our experience here. But he's sitting on the settee. The male figure is also sitting on the settee with him. He kind of explains how he's feeling in the room, and then you'll see Michelle, the medium, come into the room, and then he'll describe what happens when she comes in.
Welcome's a guest.
Can you see me?
Not yet. There you go. You're in now.
And it's very still. I don't.
Oh, I feel it.
Okay. I can't.
Oh, yeah, you can feel it.
I do feel something
Oh,
now.
wow.
It
He's
feels
still there.
disturbed. Okay, so now that
Oh, he's
not
gone.
disturbed.
Gone.
Oh, yep.
So, yeah, I get the same
He
feeling
just
from
like
downstairs.
got up and
Yeah, he bolted.
He bolted when you raised your arm.
It was very disturbed once you.
So he's basically saying the whole time he's in there and the figure is on the settee with him, that the room is just very still, very calm. And when Michelle enters into the room, he said it felt chaotic or, very high energy when she walked into the room.
So to go back to your question about did I feel anything so when I first started here about 10 years ago, I could walk that entire home and there was nothing. There was nothing. And after being here and now working on a daily basis, I think a lot of that stuff is, and I've been told as well as I've seen on shows, like I said with the mediums, you open yourself up to it. It tends to happen more. So now I can go through the home on certain occasions. It doesn't happen every time. But then, I will notice at certain places, and it's usually the same places, and we'll talk about that a little bit, and because there's some doubt. But I'll get to the point where, the hair is standing up on my arms, right? You get chill bumps or, those kind of sensations. And then I'm like, is this because there's actually something here or there's something going on? Or am I just knowing that things have happened here in the past or somebody else has said something? Is that me psyching myself out? So you get that doubt, and I think about that every time, and they're always like, you got to trust yourself, you got to trust this, and I'm like, it's very difficult because I don't have those, they're like, oh, and so forth. So, but yet there are some things that are indistinguishable, and I had one of those last week, actually, as we were kind of talking in the office about things, something occurred. We're going to move down to the dining room. So, the dining room is, the thing we're going to talk about here actually happened, it was between me and Sandy, and then something happened last week with Sandy and Diane. And you're going to hear Sandy's name a lot, so I personally think Sandy is the reason why a lot of these things happen. All right, she says no, so she and I were in the dining room, and we were at one end of it, and we smelled this incredibly strong smell of flowers, like really, really strong. It wasn't faint. We've had faint smells before in the formal parlor, faint smell of roses. I'm like, is that your perfume? She's like, I don't wear perfume. And there was even one point where, you know, it was like, she was like, okay, it was like over here, it's on this side of you, all right? Because, and then she would come over, she's like, I smell it. And then she's like, okay, now it's gone. And I'm like, you know, and she's like, I'm like, are you sure that's not you? And she's like, I don't know, is it my shampoo? I'm like, I don't know. And she's like, smell my hair. And I'm like, so, you know, so that's just kind of a typical day here at the Historical Society. So, yeah, if somebody had walked in while that was going on, that would have been a story. But, you know, it's like, she's like, no, now it's behind you. Now it's on the other side. And then we're like, oh, and then it would go away. And we're like, all right. And then we went on our business. We went upstairs to the top of the stairs, and there it is again. There are no fresh flowers in the house, you know, those kind of things, and things like that. So, but we hear a very strong smell. And she's like, it smells like gardenia. And I'm like, well, I'll take your word for it because I don't know what the gardenia smells like. Even though I think my grandmother used to wear a perfume called Jungle Gardenia, I think. But anyway, that was out of my memory. But we noticed that we kind of split up to try to find the smell, and it would be one place, and then it would disappear. So it was actually wherever I went, the smell would go away from me. So we got finally positioned Sandy where I wasn't. So then we would switch, and we would switch. And we would do this, and we would kind of go around the table. And she was like, okay, yep, if I would go to an area, it would go to where she was. And then I would go to a different area. She's like, it's over here now. So again, we've been told that the only person that we know that's ever been in this area is Wilhelmina. So is that her, you know, basically going, get away from me, or whatever? We know we've been told she's not hugely fond of males, especially in her space in the parlor. So was that one of those situations? But that went on for several minutes where it was like, again, it was like this traveling smell that literally, I would get there and I would smell it for about a second, it would go away, and she would say, now it's over here. And I would go down to where she was, and sure enough, and then it would disappear, and then I would, you know, and so forth, and then she would be like, now it's over here. So that was a little game of cat and mouse that we played. But then again, as of last week, you guys were in the dining room.
Yeah, so Brian was on vacation. Sandy and I had something that we needed to put upstairs. So we were walking through the dining room, heading towards the staircase, and we stopped and we were looking at some of the items in the curio next to the doorway that is near the stairs. And we're talking, and we both stop because we hear something. And of course, we have the term, did you hear that? So we both look at each other, say that. It sounded like someone moving around on the second floor. No one else was in the house. It was just the two of us. So she looked at me and I said, do you want me to go first? And she said, yes. So we go to the stairs and we start up the stairs and I say, okay, here we come. We're coming up. We get to the top of the stairs. We take a look around. Of course, no one's up there. We don't see anything out of place. So unexplained noise that we heard coming from the second floor.
And a lot of times with the footsteps you hear, it's very distinct. It's almost like shoes or boots on a wood floor. All the floors in the home are carpeted. So, you know, there's that. And of course, there's the whole thing with intelligent hauntings and residual hauntings. So an intelligent haunting is kind of like what we've demonstrated here, or what we hope we're demonstrating, which is there's a reaction to what you do. So if you ask the figure to do something and it does it, and there's lots of other things that you can communicate with, whether it be REM pods, and we'll show you some examples of that, or flashlights. There are certain flashlights you can use. And you set one up as the yes flashlight, you set one up as the no flashlight, and then you ask yes, no questions, and things of that sort. And again, then you say, okay, there's a response or whatever. If you ask a question and it's 30 seconds, then you're like, nah. But when you get into a period where you're asking questions and those lights come on almost immediately, and you ask a no question and the yes goes off and the no comes on, and vice versa, and things like that, and you can keep that going for, you know, a minute or so or more, that's pretty interesting. Especially if you go back and you ask the same question in a different way and you get the same answer, or you ask the opposite question and you get the opposite answer. And we've had that happen here numerous times. We'll show a really, really short clip of that because that's usually a more prolonged thing. And, you know, we just, you know, again. The other thing that you have to keep in mind is when you watch those shows on television, because we'll have events here, they're usually in those locations for up to 3 days. All right, and they can condense that down into an hour of activity, and then you take commercials out and it's even less. So I can honestly say that of all the investigations we've had here, we've never had a time where nothing happens. Are some of them better than others or more active than others? Absolutely. So again, sometimes those exchanges are very brief. Sometimes it happens once and it doesn't happen again. Other times you can repeat that as you go. She mentioned the top of the stairs, so we're going to go up to the top of the stairs. You go to the stairway. So we've been told by numerous mediums, and then we also have some event occurrences that happen in front of groups, paid ticketed event groups, where you see things happen at the top of the stairs. We've been told that something unpleasant happened at the top of the staircase. No one can actually tell us what it was. It wasn't violent, but there was just something unpleasant, whether it was a huge argument or some kind of disagreement, some kind of altercation up there. But no one's been able to describe what exactly it is right outside of the bathroom. So in 2018, we had a group up and we were standing at the top of the stairs, which is kind of this area back here. Looking back, that's the bathroom right there, which there's a picture of. We had a medium up there and she was talking about sensations and what she was feeling. She's like, there's something in the bathroom that just doesn't quite feel right. It's kind of like an ominous feeling. She's just like, it's this and that. And while she's describing this feeling, a small little orb of light, ball of light with a trail, kind of shoots out of the bathroom and goes, it looks like it either A, goes into her head, or B, goes behind her, but doesn't come out the other side. And so she's talking with that, and then all of a sudden she literally is like, well, I don't feel very well. Okay? So next to me was a woman who was part of the guests, and she was filming it, and I said literally the standard motto, right? Did you see that? And she's like, yeah, I think I actually have it on video. So we stopped, we went back, we watched on the phone, and sure enough, this ball of light goes out into this woman's head, or what appears to go into this woman's head. And I'm like, please, 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 email that footage to us. And she's like, oh yeah, I will do it, no problem, blah, 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 blah. Well, of course, she didn't. But I have seen orbs with my own eyes, and orbs are tricky because you see them in pictures and I'm like, oh my God, there's an orb. Well, there's so many things that can affect a picture. Glare, light, reflection, bugs, dust. There's so many things. But when you actually see it with your own eyes and you see this orb, move around or do things, or I've seen them go up the corner of the house and go up a corner of a room and then go across the ceiling and the wall. That's different. And of course, you're like, whatever. And I think she'll talk about one of these later that we had down in the basement. But we've had a medium say that they see a woman come out of one of the bedrooms and run around the corner toward the stairs at a fairly frantic pace and then disappear, and things of that sort. So, and based on the description, it wasn't one of the Benninghofens. So is this possibly, and that's the other thing, is that there were two other families that lived here. So is that little boy connected to one of those other two families? Because they did a little name game with him one time, and we did the names of the Benninghofens, and nothing panned out because he was literally telling the medium, she was like, was asking him what's his name, and he was like, you have to guess. So we were throwing names out of the Christian, Peter, all the other, and then he giggled and ran down the hallway and disappeared. So that's why he's still, unknown. So this was actually in March of this year. We had a group of guys come in, 3 young men, and I was skeptical of them at first because they called themselves the Ghost Bros. But they were actually awesome and very respectful, very nice guys. You can go onto YouTube. They have a channel. You can check out, you can watch the entire, they were here for about 3 to 4 hours. They got about 20 minutes of footage based on this. And this is a clip from their investigation. So they were down in the basement, 1 floor right below us in this room, doing a spirit box session, where they have a device that theoretically allows spirits to communicate using radio frequencies and things of that sort. And so one of the things while they're going on, at one thing, the machine actually spits out the word toilet. So they actually say, based on the timestamps of their 2 videos, because they had 6 to 8 cameras stationed around the house that just ran the whole time, no matter where they were. So they had one in the bathroom, because and so forth, that there's something in here, we've been told something in here is kind of not right. So they had this camera set up, and and I did not bring it with me, but so they have a little plastic Did we take it? It's a little plastic. It's actually a cat toy. It's a ball, and when the cat bats it, it lights up and flashes. And those are being now, a lot of people are starting to use those because they're very motion sensitive. But they're not that motion sensitive. We had one here the other night, and I sat it there and I could tap, it wouldn't go off, but if you actually hit it itself, it would go off. So they have a cat ball set up on the towel rack right here, and they have the camera. And they say that according to the timestamps, and I have to take them at their word, I didn't actually see it with my own eyes, but they say that when the voice downstairs says, out of the machine says toilet, that's when this cat ball starts to flash. And then they're going to basically say, at first when they went through, they're like, oh, but then they noticed something else about this video. So we'll go ahead and play that.
The camera we left abandoned in the bathroom caught this. But that's not all. When the cat ball started to go off, you can see a shadow figure in the mirror.
So this is a little pedestal mirror. Yeah, well, they put that in. Yeah, I should thank that. That's them. Yeah, that's all them. They make it very dramatic. And we're going to see some other clips with the cat balls, and they'll use that same bop, 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 bop. And I think they picked because it almost is exactly the same as the flashing. So that's the first time that we've ever seen something like that. Visual apparitions are something that is not common here. Matter of fact, as far as I know, outside of this, if that's even legit, it's happened twice that I know of, at least in the past 20 years. So this is not a regular occurrence. We don't have the old residual, every night at midnight when a full moon or whatever, if the lady in white comes down the staircase. We don't have anything like that. And we'll talk about those as in the next couple slides about those visual things. Most of the occurrences down here are not visual, as far as seeing apparitions or shadow people or anything like that. But that was interesting, and the fact that actually, so I went up after I watched this video. They sent it to me 3 days later, and they're like, "Oh, here's what we." I went up and I kind of stood where the camera was, and that mirror is actually aimed. This is actually the doorway of the bathroom. So whatever that was, and again, went across the doorway that mirror is actually pointed right out the door. So I thought, well, that's interesting because it wasn't in the room. And again, based on what we've been told about something happening, and then the one medium said that somebody ran across. Again, it just adds, it's just another piece that it gets you a little bit closer, but it also creates just more questions and things like that. So that is that. The former parlor is the most active room downstairs. The most active room on the second floor is what we call the McBride room. It's actually the last building on the right-hand side. And the reason why we call it the McBride room is because James McBride hangs out in that room. And he never leaves that room. He doesn't like it when other people are in that room with him. He is not the only spirit that hangs out in that room, but we don't know him to ever be anywhere else. Now, the reason why he's probably here is what we guess is over in the corner of this room is this desk right here. James McBride was the first mayor of Hamilton. He was one of the original trustees of Miami University. He was the first guy to map Butler County in 1836. So he was an amateur archaeologist. He was a surveyor. He was like this jack of all trades, master of almost all of them. But one thing we do know about James McBride is that he was not a great lover of people. He preferred to be, solitary and things like that. He would much prefer to hang out with his books and his drawings and things like that. How his friend John Woods convinced him to become the first mayor of Hamilton, I really don't know. But he did. But that desk is the same desk that Mr. McBride used as the mayor of Hamilton. It was donated to us several decades ago. That is his private Bible there on the desk. That is his ink. There's a picture of him up there. So there are a lot of private possessions that belong to James McBride on that desk. This is also the room where most of the physical activity happens. Hair being touched, tugging, people being tapped, things of that sort. So it doesn't happen everywhere in the facility, but that's the room where it happens most. I didn't find this out initially, but when Diane first started, She eventually told me, usually I find out things from Diane several weeks after they've happened. Her first week here, she can tell you about the McBride room.
Yeah, so the first week that I was here, every time I walked into the McBride room, I would get a headache. And I didn't want to be the weird new girl who said, every time I go in that room, I get a headache, and as soon as I leave, it goes away. So I don't tell anybody that. And then after I'm here for a few weeks and the volunteers are sharing information with me, and they mention about his tie to Miami University and that he tends to mess with Miami alum, which I fit the bill for that. So I find out that other people also experience a headache when they go in there. So that would explain my initial reaction when I walked in there. And I've also noticed that when I'm giving tours, I usually don't bring up paranormal stuff unless somebody specifically asks. So I just give a regular historic tour. But this is usually the last room that we get to. And when we get there, this is the only room that people seem to have a reaction to. So people will walk in and say, oh, I don't like this room, and they turn around and walk out. Or some of them can't even bring themselves to walk in the room. And I've given them a tour of the entire house, and they haven't had a reaction like that in any of the other rooms, just this one.
So a couple, 3 years ago, we had a wedding dress exhibit, and I was taking a tour of three ladies around, and we walked up. So we had a 1960s Jackie O style designer dress kind of set up over here on the other side of the bed. And on top of the desk, we had like an 8x10 photo. They used to put them in like those folders, like the paper. So we had it sitting there, and it was actually, folded open like a tent, of the woman actually wearing the wedding dress. So it was the same dress and woman wearing it. So we walk in, and two ladies walk ahead, and they turn around to face me, and one of the other ladies is standing here next to me in the doorway. And just as I begin to talk, we see that photo folder on top of the desk. It didn't just fall over. It wasn't like it got blown over by wind. It actually, we watched it, it actually closed and then fell over. And the woman next to me standing there, she goes, "Did you see that?"
We should not make that into a drinking game.
It's true. And I said, yes. And she said, okay, good. And of course the other two ladies were like, what? And so we told them, and they're like, oh. There's a lot of activity that happens in this room, a lot of different things that have happened, and you're shaking your head yes, so I'm going to guess that you've had some experiences up there as well. But as Diane said, yeah, we have guests just come through, and some people come through, and the first thing out of their mouth is this place haunted. And then the doll case upstairs. Everybody's like, we have people who won't walk past that doll case, and things like that. But so I'm like, there's nothing to be worried about unless it actually follows you with its head. But I mean, we've had, obviously there's the whole sensitive thing and things like that. We've been told. But then there's also like, the low-tech stuff, whether it be like we use divining rods here. And again, it's the same thing. Cross the sticks for yes, separate for no, those kind of things. Same divining rods that are used to find water and everything else. They're supposed to be energy-based and things like that. They pick up on that. But to REM pods and EMFs and all these other kind of devices as well. So there's been a lot of other activity. We use thermal here a lot. FLIR thermal cameras and things of that sort to pick up on things. I'll show you a picture from this room about that as well.
We had the investigation last year. And a group of people were in this room, and all of a sudden they noticed that there was a puddle of water on the bed. Can't explain where the water came from. No one, would take responsibility for spilling their water bottle. So Brian was there.
Well, only one person had a water bottle. It was one of the investigators, and I thought, Matt, did you spill your? But it wasn't a puddle. It was actually like a perfect dome of water. It was not seeping into yet, And of course, it's on an 1800s quilt, so I'm freaking out. And then there's the bed underneath and all that kind of stuff. So I see it there, and I know one of our board members, who's actually a direct descendant of the Benninghofen family, was there that day too. And so I'm like, Matt, did you spill your water? And he's like, I swear, my water bottle's over here on the floor. I didn't have it, whatever. But so, and by the time we went through that display and looked back, it was gone. So I was like, oh my God, it's soaked in. So I put my hand under the covers because I'm like, if this is water in here, is it soaked in? What do we need to get? Somebody go get towels. It was not wet underneath. Now, it's possible it all just soaked into the quilt and never made its way to the bed. But the weird thing about it is that where I had my hand, it was, oddly enough, it was considerably warmer. It was one of those things where I could be like warm, 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 cold, warm, 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 cold, and so it basically, so there was a area of warmth, and of course then everybody started making jokes about, oh yeah, ghost pee and stuff like that, and things like that, but it was just, and there seemed to be somebody said, well, seems to be an indentation there. It's like, well, you could have, whatever, was somebody sitting there or whatever at some point. So we actually, I think, consciously fluffed it back up, to where there was no, and then I want to say, after that investigation, then we came back a couple days later the next week, and we went upstairs, and that indentation was back into the bed. So whether it's just the stuffing of the bed settling or whatever that might be, which is certainly possible. One of the things, we don't just take things and go, oh, yep, that's what it is. We try to come up with things that like explain what it might be, or you debunk it or whatever it might be. And sometimes we're very successful at doing that. Other times, not so much. So again, that's one of those situations. So here's a couple more. So this is actually a clip. It's very, very short. But again, this is Ashley St. Dennis. She's a medium. And she has the 2 flashlights down here on the floor, and she's been asking questions, and 2 of the figures that are supposed to inhabit the McBride room with Mr. McBride, which he does not like, are these 2 little girls. And they're very documented, and as a matter of fact, one of them is actually one of the apparitions that's been seen a couple occasions. It's been the same little girl. So she has a yes flash. I can't remember if it's yes and no or yes and no. But anyway, that's a REM pod back behind her. That's an EMF detector. Again, the closer you get to that antenna, we all give off EMF. So if you bring your hand closer to that antenna, it'll start going off. The lights will go off. It'll start beeping and things like that. You asked about a ball. So we know that the little girls are upstairs, and we know that that little boy has been upstairs too. So we have, at times we'll set balls up there and ask them to move the ball or to play the ball or kick the ball. There have also been times where we've basically left the ball upstairs in the hallway, and we come back the next day and it is somewhere else. Not far. It's not like somebody picked it, it's just like it was in the middle of the hallway and now it's in the end, or now it's in the doorway of one of the rooms. Again, is it possible that the air handling system hit it just right? Yeah, absolutely. We can't, but again, so yeah, we do those kind of things. We know she wanted to actually communicate with the little girls, who we'll talk about here in the next slide. So she actually had the little girl come out of the crowd and sit down with her, and asked her, to basically play with this little girl, or hey, this little girl's your age, and so forth. So you're going to hear her ask questions about, is this the boy girl or the boy ghost or the girl ghost? Assuming that they know they're a ghost. I asked her after, I'm like, how do you, maybe they don't even realize. And she's like, no, they realize. I'm like, okay. She's like, some people don't realize, but these girls realize. And I'm like, okay. And then she'll ask something if it's past their bedtime. So she asked the question, is this the girl ghost or the boy ghost? And the flashlights will actually, this one will go off and that one will come on. And then she asked the other question, and I believe that one goes back off and that one comes back on. In pretty rapid succession. So, if I didn't describe this clip right, forgive me. It's one or the other.
Boy spirit?
So she had already asked the question,
Yes.
and
Okay. They switch. Is it past your bedtime?
so that was the yes. So this is the actual yes thing, and that's the no. So she asked, are you the girl ghost, right? Are you the boy ghost? So then this one went off, that one went on. And so forth. So, and you can actually see the difference. They've actually moved the REM pod from the clip. So that was, again, probably 15 minutes of activity that's been condensed down into literally 10 seconds. But that went on. That give and take went on for quite a while. And things like that. I mentioned the FLIR thermal cameras. There's an example. So there's a cradle up in that room. And as you can see, the center of the mattress in that cradle is a couple degrees, is warmer, a couple degrees warmer than the rest of the cradle. Again, it's not residual heat. The windows are closed. It wasn't like the sun was shining on that all day. And even if it was, the whole thing would be lit up, not just a spot in the middle of the mattress. So just chalk it up to something that is unexplained, and so forth. But that's an example of using thermal type stuff. We've never actually captured a silhouette or a figure with thermal here, but we have been able to capture things that appear to be warmer, as in like somebody had been sitting there at one point or something, or things of that sort, or like personal hygiene devices that are sitting on the dresser, so like a mirror or a comb or a brush, and they are warmer. Then like one device is warmer than all the others, like the brush is giving off heat, but yet the comb and the other things next to it are not. So again, those kind of things. So we talked about the two little girls, and I'm going to turn it over to Diane. She's going to tell you about them. They're the most mobile, and I'll tell you a story. I should have told this at the dining room, but I'll tell you a story about that. So, but they're mobile.
So these portraits are in the McBride room, and we're told that James McBride isn't really pleased that these girls are in there. He doesn't really want to deal with the little girls. So Anna is in the gray dress and Isabel is in the blue dress. So the apparition that Brian has previously mentioned, when they come upstairs, both of the people saw a girl in a gray dress from the waist up sitting in a chair in the hallway. So it's presumed that it could be Anna Owens. So they lived on 2nd Street, just a block from the museum here. Their dad passed away when they were 13 and 12. Their mother died when they were adults, 37 and 36. We don't know a whole lot about Isabel other than after 1910 in the census, she is living in a home for the feeble-minded in Columbus. Anna studied at Vassar and Yale. She also lived in Europe between 1911 and 1918. And she donated a lot of their personal items to the museum, and those items tend to set off the paranormal equipment. We actually have back here on the case the little fur muff and the earmuffs and the hat. Those were personal belongings of them, so those items tend to set some stuff off. But yes, they are mobile. They go into the toy room. They're in the McBride room. They're in the hallway. And we just learned a story, and it could be one of these girls.
So, continue a sec. So, last night, a gentleman by the name of Ted Keep was here. And Ted works at Hamilton High School, and he is part of the program where they bring students out, and they actually come here once a week, and they kind of clean up for us. They vacuum, they do those kind of things. They take the garbage out. And so he talked about one time where he had brought in, they noticed that one of their workers had disappeared. So they look for her, and they finally go around the house, and they finally find her. She's in the dining room underneath the dining room table. And he asked her, he's like, what are you doing here? And she's like, well, I'm playing with the little girls. And of course he was like, okay, well, let's go. We have to go now. And he's like, of course there was no one there. So he told that story Thursday. He had told us before, about a week or two ago, when he learned that this is what the program was. So he gave us that story as well. So Diane mentioned that they hang out in the toy room. So it's right next to, we call it that because we have all of our old toys in there. And there's a lot of activity. And all the activity is basically very low level. So we will take children in there, or have children if they come for the events or so forth, and sit on the floor and, get them to engage or ask, come and, you want to play or have this or that. So this is the Ghost Bros again. And this is from the same investigation. So you'll basically see, this is when they first set up. This one, they've got a cat ball sitting up on the tray of the high chair here. They've got a REM pod on the floor. Same thing. They just set a cat ball down here. That's why it's still flashing. They've got a REM pod on the floor here, as you'll see. So you're gonna hear him, and then you're gonna see the REM pod activity.
That might be in this room with us. We've set up some motion cat balls and a motion device on the ground with blinking red lights.
That's not you. That's not me. I heard it immediately as soon as you started it.
Thank you so much. That's exactly what we wanted. Can you get close to it one more time? I just set that up. I was hoping you could communicate with me. Oh, wow.
So, EMF detectors like a REM pod. They pick up EMF. We all give off electromagnetic energy. So if you take your hand and put it close to the antenna, that it will go off. K2 meters are another form of, and these were devices that were used initially by electricians to find electrical anomalies and things like that. So, and there's various different forms of them. So, if you have them and you have your phone on and it's not on airplane mode, your phone can cause an EMF detector to go off. Outlets in your house, especially if it's an older house, can cause an EMF detector to go off. Exposed wiring can cause an EMF detector. Panel boxes. So a lot of times what they'll initially do when someone feels that they're like, oh, there's something in my basement. All right, I go down there and I feel uneasy. You go down there and you take an EMF detector or a K2 meter and it buries the needle. There's a lot of that extra energy that's just being shot off from equipment or whatever. And that can have a physical effect on you. It can make you feel paranoid. It can make you think somebody's watching you. It can make you ill. And things like that. So, depending on we did an investigation at the county courthouse. Only person ever allowed. We were there July 3 years ago. No one's been allowed there, before or since. And we went down to the basement of the courthouse and we turned the meters on, and that entire floor down there, there's so many exposed panels and things like that and conduit. It's amazing that your fillings didn't go off. There was so much. So that kind of stuff. So here's the other. So this is while they're in another part of the house. So again, the cat ball goes off, and then real quick, again, it's just a single bleep of the REM pod there that's at the foot. So again, what can cause the cat ball to go off? Again, the same thing with the REM pod. You do a sweep first. You basically go in the room. And I think Emma can, there she is, so she can attest to this. She's one of our interns, and she had her first go at stuff last week, I believe. So you do a sweep first. You basically go in and before you investigate, you find the spots in the room that cause the meter to go off. Is it these outlets? Is it this light switch? And a lot of times you go in and there's nothing in the entire room, all right? But then something causes things to go off. This doll sitting right here. Right? She actually can cause EMF detectors to spike. All right? She's an inanimate object. She's made of porcelain and other things. There's no reason why she should be giving off EMF. There are also times when she's laying on a table and her one eye will open, or both eyes. We had a volunteer notice that about a week ago, and they were like, "Please get that doll out of this room," when they were getting ready to set her up here. There's been times where she's being held in a horizontal fashion and her eyes will open. We actually used her we had a Victorian funeral traditions display, and we set the parlor up as in like there was a wake there, and we used her in this little tiny little coffin thing, and you could set the meter on her chest and it would go off occasionally. Again, there's no reason why that should be happening. So we'll talk about her a little bit more. So we're going to go down to the next. We're going to go down right below us, one floor below us in the basement.
I get a question.
Yeah.
The little girl named Owens, was they related to Hoob and Owens?
Yeah, that was their father. Yes, and they were personal friends of the Benninghofen family. They lived a block up, so they were about the same age as Pauline and Caroline. So yeah, so they would have spent a lot of time here. And like I said, Anna she donated a lot of things, including those portraits and a lot of other items. So that's the reason why it's suspected that they're here, because a lot of their personal items are here. Yes? You want to handle that? Okay.
That was the same question Thursday night. So we've been told that they come back as the age of their portraits because that was a happy time for them, and they're attached to those portraits.
So, yeah, and the general theory is that, I mean, again, this is all theory, that spirits, some people say spirits have the ability to choose. So why Wilhelmina is in her 60s down in the formal parlor, that's what she is. But yeah, there are certain things where you can choose whether it's a happier time or whatever it might be. There's theories that, well, sometimes spirits are attached to a place because of trauma or unfinished business or anything like that. So, you take, whatever the age of whenever that trauma happened. So again, it's all theory, but supposedly, I guess the catch-all easy answer would be, oh, someone came up with the idea that they can choose to be whatever they want to be. Yeah.
Kathy Creighton said that when the doll was in the casket, that she would be positioned a certain way.
Right. Yeah. So again, and actually when she was discovered, we'll tell a little bit coming to this room. So again, when things like that happen, I usually go and ask all the volunteers, did you touch this? Did you do this? Because we've also, like when we were closed in 2020 for COVID, we came back and there were little tiny fingerprints on like the toy piano upstairs, and some of the little irons had been moved and things like that. So because we were still here doing some work and things like that, but we were closed to the public. Did you go upstairs and move that stuff? No, I don't think so. No. Okay, well, again, and I have a bunch of pictures of those. I didn't include it in here. But yeah, there's things like that. And again, it's the main thing. Did you do that? Don't know. So downstairs.
So you'll see the cases have lights in them. So we put those lights in about 8 months ago, I guess. And the lights keep coming on without us going down and turning them on. Now they are on a remote control to turn them off. So we're trying to debunk it, like, okay, maybe it's someone's garage door opener, but they come on, but they never turn off. So if it was somebody's remote, it would turn them on and off. The only way they go off is if we physically go down and turn them off. And we have even had instances where we turn them off, and before we get to the other side of the room to walk out, they're back on again. So we cannot explain that phenomenon that is occurring. So there was one day that Brian was down there to turn them off. Sandy had come back upstairs. She's watching in the other room. We have all of our security monitors. She's watching on the security camera while Brian is down there. He turns them off. He goes to exit the room, and as he walks out, Sandy sees an orb make like the shape of a W across the room right after he turned the lights off and left.
So we've been told that there are, we know there's a Spanish-American War veteran down there, and he's been down there quite a while. We kind of found out through trial and error, hit and miss, yes and no, that his name is we knew the unit. It was attached to a photograph. His name is Lloyd Taylor. Not a local guy, but there are some possessions of that unit down there. We've been told there's a Native American down there, and the theory is, or the belief is he's attached. Some people actually say he's Little Turtle, which was the chief of the Miamis, and because that's his ceremonial tomahawk/peace pipe. So that doesn't, that's not necessarily again proven fact, but we have been told by numerous different mediums on a lot of different occasions there's a Native American down here. So, and a story to go along with that was Sandy and I were down in the basement one time, and the whole area used to be a lot of Native American artifacts. Both of those cases used to be filled with arrowheads and things. We kind of condensed that and took some of that stuff away to display other things. We moved our Native American stuff to another part of the room that's not in that photo. But we used to have in the corner of the room this whole little interior setup of like a wigwam type deal. So we were going to take that away. We're going to move that, and they had put a bunch of mulch on the carpet and things. And Sandy and I were down there talking about taking all that down, taking this set, putting these other displays up. And while she and I are talking, back in the far corner of the room, we hear something that sounds. It's pretty much it starts low, but then it picks up. So it started. It was very breathy. So it was like. And of course, then we both looked, and of course we said. Yeah, and absolutely. But literally within like less than 2 seconds after that happened, and she and I are probably 30 feet from where we heard it, right behind her we heard, and it was about that loud. And I thought I was going to have to catch her because she left the floor. And we were like, okay, so, and then so when we talked about that Thursday, someone said, did you still take all that stuff away? Yeah, we did. But But again, as she says, we will leave those lights on. They will never go off. But as soon as we turn them off, sometimes before, like she said, we're out of the room, they come back on. Sometimes I'll turn them off, I'll walk up and I'll look at the security cameras and they're back on. And again, could it be some other kind of interference? Absolutely. But the fact that they never go off, I've had people in my neighborhood, be on the same garage frequency, and when you open it, it opens, and when it closes, even though it's 3 doors down. So the fact that they come on but never go off, we can't explain that. But that's kind of the deal. So we talked about, and I know we're kind of going long here. So the area where most of the activity now occurs in the house or in the facility is the lobby, and it never used to be that way. And this is where Diane spends most of her time. So
the first week that I was here, I was sitting at the desk and I felt something push on my leg. I mean, not something that wanted to push me down, but just a nudge on the leg. And again, like Brian mentioned, I wouldn't tell anybody this stuff because I didn't want to be the weird new girl again. So it was probably a couple weeks later before I mentioned that to him. But actually, I keep a record of all of these things that go on here in the notes app in my phone now. So I have a whole log of these things that go on. But when I'm sitting here, I hear noises from the house all the time. And I've actually recently had a phantom smell there. We had smelled an unpleasant smell in here one day a couple weeks ago. Brian and Sandy and I smelled it. And then the next day, I smelled it at my desk. So I was typing at my computer. I turned around to reach into the drawer behind me, and I smelled it behind me. I could turn back around to the computer. It wasn't there. Turn back around, and the smell was there. So if it was something that we thought originally was coming from the ventilation system, it would have filled the whole room, not just a concentrated area there. Back on September 20th, Brian and I were taking the pictures that you're seeing in the presentation here. We had to move some things out of the way to take the pictures, and as we were putting those things back, we heard a loud noise come from the exhibit area on the porch. We both looked at each other and said the catchphrase. And then we go back to putting the stuff away, and then we heard what sounded like footsteps up there. So again, a lot of uptick from this area here.
So, and the reason why, I mentioned General Ferdinand Vanderveer. He was the commanding officer of the 35th Ohio, which was a Civil War unit that was mustered. About 80% was mustered here in Butler County. We brought that flag back. It had been in our possession. It was actually General Vanderveer's family had it from after the Civil War to the mid-1950s. They then donated it to us. It then sat in our basement for another 70 years until 2020, when I decided that that needs to be conserved and we need to do something with it. So it was in Cleveland for 3 years being conserved. It's now down in our lobby. So we put that in there. We put that, and then we also decided to bring the bust of General Vanderveer down, and sitting on that pedestal also his spurs that he wore during the Civil War. And we had a medium come in and basically, she basically said so he now hangs out in the lobby with his possessions. He's moved from the library to the lobby, and so forth. And I would hope to think that he's very pleased and proud that we actually, have his flag back up. So that's a lot of stuff that's going on. The big thing, and we'll end with this last thing here. So last summer, we had a Civil War exhibit. And it was no question that as soon as this exhibit was up, that things started happening on a fairly regular basis. Most of this stuff before was in storage. A lot of it came from the monument over here for display. So we don't know if that had something to do with it, but we do know there have been investigations at the monument, and things have happened over there, as small as the building it is. So we did this exhibit, and immediately we started hearing things. We started getting in the display area. There was a distinct smell of cologne that had never been smelled before, and things of that sort. And I've had the phantom cigar smoke upstairs down in the basement. Again, a second or two. It's like you're walking through and then you turn around and it's gone, type of deal. But
So the exhibit opened on September 7th. The following Saturday, I was here working. Brian was out that day. There were 2 other volunteers that were in the research room.
I know it seems like I'm never here, but that's not true. I'm actually here a lot.
Right. So the two other volunteers, they were working quietly in the research room. I'm sitting at my desk, and up from the area of the Civil War exhibit, I hear. Of course, I don't tell anybody. So Brian comes back to work the next week, and it's probably even days after that I finally mentioned to him that I heard that. And then that leads into his experience that he had on September 28th, which ends up being a momentous day for the unit.
So September 28th is a Saturday. I'm here. It's between 8 a.m. and 8:15. And I'm in my office, which is right as you come in, right to the left. And I hear from outside of my office, I hear and I think someone's at the front door to be let in. I'm like, well, it's early for Diane, but who knows, whatever. So I go out to the front door, and there's no one there, right? There's the windows, there's no one there. And I'm like, well, and then immediately behind me, as I turn to look out the door, I hear paper rustling behind me on Diane's desk. So I turn around, and I look over. I'm like, did something fall? Is there papers on the floor behind the desk? No, nothing. So I'm like, interesting. So I'm standing there. And then from up in the display area, up the ramps, I hear the same knock. So I'm like, So I start walking up the ramp. I go up, and I get to the doorway right before I go into the display area, and behind me on Diane's desk. So I turn around, and I said, are you bleeping me? And I came back down. So, and again, if you had seen the security footage, you'd see me talking to no one. Basically going, okay, you got me, that's pretty good. Is this General Vanderveer? Is this you? Is this, something, somebody else? And there was a huge bang from up in a storage, it used to be an office, a storage area, a huge bang, and the motion sensor lights in that area go on. So I'm like, okay, well, that's interesting. So I look back, and I go back behind toward the back, and we used to have a cabinet behind or adjacent to her desk, and it used to have books and pamphlets and papers on it. Well, they're all on the floor. So I'm like, So I pick them all up, I put them back, and I'm like, I wonder if that's the paper I heard. Maybe it fell or whatever. So she comes in, I ask her, I'm like, hey, were there papers on the floor? Right there, and she walks past there about 12 times or more a day, and she's like, no, and I wouldn't leave them laying there if there were, and I'm like, I would hope not. But that was an interesting. So right after that is when I decided, so I call the medium that kind of does a lot of stuff here. I'm like, hey, you need to come over because this morning's been really weird, more weird than ever. And so when Diane came in, she got curious and thought of something I didn't even think of. So
I thought, is there something significant to this date? Were they in a battle that day, or did something significant happen? It was 160 years to the day that unit mustered out of the Army.
So so Ashley came over, and she walked in, and that's when we found out. She's like, oh, well, who's this? The guy in the statue. I'm like, that's General Vanderveer. And she's like, okay, well, he's here, right here in the lobby now. And so she set up a bunch of cameras and things so that she left up for 3 days. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. But last week, Diane and Sandy and Emma went down to the basement, and they're like, oh, go ahead, I'll let you tell the story.
So Emma had never used paranormal equipment, so Brian was on vacation, so we thought, what better time to play with this stuff when the boss isn't here? So we took a REM pod downstairs, and I put it on one of the cases down there, and it was dead silent. I move it to another case, dead silent. I move it over to the desk that's pictured here. We've moved that back downstairs, and when I put it on the corner of that desk, it instantly lit up, beeping, just unbelievable. Nothing compared to what you saw in the earlier clips where it was just one little blink. I mean, it was going crazy. Picked it up, put it back on the case, and it would be dead silent. Put it back on the desk, it would go crazy. So we did that a couple times. So we had that experience last week.
So Ashley comes in, she sets up the cameras, and she's like, well, I'm here. So she goes out to the exhibit area, And she sits down in the hallway there. So she sits down. And as she's walking around the lobby, she keeps making this comment to Diane.
She keeps telling me that her fingers hurt. And, we don't really have an explanation for that. But then pieces start to fall into place as the weekend progresses.
So she goes in and she sits down and she's like, she strikes her pose with her, crisscross applesauce, hands on her knees and stuff. And she's, closing her eyes. She's like, and then she's like, my side hurts. My side really hurts. She's like, it started to hurt. And then stuff. And so, and Ashley is an empath. That's her strength. So she picks up on feelings and emotions. She's not really, doesn't see a lot of things. Sometimes she hears things, hears names or things, but mostly she's empathic. So she's like, my side really hurts. And how we usually do this, or we would do investigations or anything, is when people come in, I just let them go and talk what they talk. I don't give them any information or history about that and so forth. So I'm looking at where she's at. I see her on the floor. She's sitting right in front of a Union winter wool overcoat that was worn by a gentleman from Butler County. And so I know that the young boy, 3 days after his 18th birthday, who used to wear that coat, was actually shot and killed at Chickamauga. He was basically was killed in the side. A bullet entered his side. And then she's walking around and she's getting all these other feelings and things. We also got the cologne smell that day again, and some other things. So, she's like, there's a lot going on here. There's a lot happening here, this and this and this and this. Then she goes home, and I'll let Diane pick back up. So she goes home, and this is what happens to her at her own home later that evening. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. My bad. I'm getting ahead. I'm trying to... So part of the display was this drum right here. So this drum was actually the possession of Joseph Jackson, who was the drummer for the 35th Ohio. This was part of the display. And as you can see, it's a little worse for wear. But she had a camera sitting on a case. That's a REM pod right there. And so she had 3 days, or, she left the cameras up, I think 2 days, maybe 3, I don't know, one of the two. So she brought them back, and she kind of went through, and this is what one of the cameras picked up sitting next to the drum. Now, the cameras are, they're not top quality audio. They're more for like nanny cams and things like that, but she uses them for investigations because she can be at home and look at what's going on and things of that sort and not have to actually be there. So this is what that drum picked up on one of the days, and I want to say this is actually like about 6:30 one evening, so there's nobody here. But this is what she picked up, and she was really excited about it, and I'll tell you my thoughts on it after. But so this is what it picked up. Now, she's like, oh my God, that was the drum. And I'm like, maybe. It's kind of fuzzy because, again, it's not really good audio quality. And this and that. I'm like, it's possible. I don't know. It doesn't matter what it is because there shouldn't be a sound like that in our house at 6:30 at night when there's nobody here. But whether that's some kind of electronic anomaly, I don't know. She was convinced, and I'm like, oh, well, I mean, I'll take your word for it. We'll add it to the stack of things. But so that's the deal. So.
Ashley sets these cameras up on Saturday afternoon, leaves them run all weekend, comes back on Tuesday morning to pick them up. So when she comes to pick them up on Tuesday, she's telling us that she had a dream Saturday night and Sunday night, and it was the same dream. And it was basically this camera angle. She felt like she was seeing this in her dream, but a man kept coming and putting his face up into the frame of the camera. But part of his jaw is missing. So when she tells me that, and then I remember that she said her fingers were hurting, I said, well, let's go take a look at a picture that's in the display. So this picture we had in the Civil War display, this is Stephen Elkins, and he has a really interesting story. So he was shot 4 times within 15 minutes. So the first shot was his fingers. He lost some fingers. The second shot went through his knee, came out his thigh. The third shot was his jaw, and the last one entered behind his ear, came out his forehead. He laid on the battlefield for 2 days, was eventually picked up by Confederate soldiers, was taken to a prison hospital, eventually recovered as much as you can from that, and lived to be an old man.
So, again, the fact, and again, Ashley knows none of this information. So the fact that she comes and she's like, my fingers hurt, right? And then she's like, there's a guy who kept putting his face into my dream, right up into the thing, and part of his jaw is missing. So we kind of just went, look at each other, we're like, that sounds like Stephen Hawkins. So again, was he here? Again, when the display came down, activity has dropped. It's still higher than it was, I think, before, but it was nothing like when the display was up. So the last thing we're going to show you here, this is actually the same kind of camera, this is basically our lobby and then our hallway here. So the lights that are on this ramp are security lights, so they are always on, all the time. So you'll see that during this footage that things are happening. So either we have some massive electrical problems here that we need to get addressed, or obviously something was going on. So again, there's no sound with this video because it's just a remote camera. But this is our lobby. So, and I know that I've been in meetings in here, we have our board meetings in here, and I've sat facing that direction, and I've been sitting here, and those lights will go off and on out in that hallway. And at first I was just, my first time it happened, I'm like, those lights just went off, and everybody else was like, yeah. And I'm like, okay. And then it was, again, it was, or some people can see, because you look, and things like that, and somebody will go, the lights just went off, didn't they? And I'm like, or somebody, whoever's seeing it does it. So, that's basically kind of a not so short, apologize, history of some things that have happened here fairly recently. Like I said, as recent as last week. Again, we appreciate you coming. Thanks so much. And yes, questions.
Is there any history
of Pauline, they basically lived there up until their death.
Yeah.
So Carrie dies, I believe, 2 years before Pauline, so like 1945, I think she dies. That was at a hospital. So by then she died at Mercy, same as Pauline. So that's when they left the house. As far as that goes, I'm not sure. What do you mean?
They didn't mention that there was anything going on.
Unfortunately, they were, by the time we took possession, or we had any. So she willed the house to us. So we took possession 2 years later. So it wasn't until 1950 that it opened as a museum. So
Any of your predecessors know anything?
Oh yeah. Yeah, matter of fact, my predecessor was one of the other people who saw the apparition of what is believed to be Isabella Owen. So the other one was a medium that had come through, and once she said there was a little girl sitting in a chair, and my predecessor had the same story. So yeah, there's, like I said, I think almost, if you spend enough time here, she said, I wanted to believe in spirits and ghosts, but I never had any personal experience in my life to lead to that until I started, being involved with this place. And now that I work here every day, there's almost something every week, if not sometimes multiple times a day, on rare occasions. Nothing here. Nothing here is. We've been told, and from my experience, there's nothing here that's bad or malevolent or evil or anything like that. There's nothing harmful. our one guy downstairs, he's a kind of, we've been told he's a practical joker, and he will occasionally sometimes touch ladies on the rear end, and things like that. And we had a radio host, WUB, he was here one time, and we told that story, and she's like, oh, he won't touch me, blah, blah, blah. And then, it was about, not too long after that, she gave a yelp. And again, you have to take it at face value. Was she just doing that? Or her reaction afterward, she was kind of being snarky the whole time, because she's like, oh, this is baloney. Of her other co-host, who I think is still on UBE, he was in the whole time. Channel 5 has been here, and the reporter was, and again, when the Today Show was here, that was actually quite a bit of activity that night. And you can go to YouTube, you can type up World's Largest Ghost Hunt or Today Show Ghost Hunt, Hamilton, Ohio, and you can watch that segment that they did. It was pretty interesting, and things like that. So yeah, there's all, and some of the stories that we heard are, they've happened decades before, but we still tell them. But we wanted to focus on some of the most recent stuff that's just, and plus the fact that it's picked up. Don't know why that is. A lot of times they say if you disturb something, or if you're doing renovation or construction or something like that, it will cause that. We're not doing any of that. The only thing we did was we changed the display downstairs, and when we got that really kind of angry, breathy sound, if that's even the way to describe it. But
has anybody ever done a seance here?
No. Usually the groups that we deal with don't dabble in stuff like that. So they're kind of, they're not into provoking or anything like that, and they don't do that. I mean, I know there are some people, they're like, oh, they'll call and can we bring in a Ouija board? I'm like, no. Not really, and I know that Parker Brothers or whoever it was put that game out or whatever. So yeah, and I'm always usually here when we don't let people in here without being supervised. So I'm here. I may not be with them all the time, but there's somebody that's here. But yeah, there's nobody who's done that. Even though one of the Benninghofens, one of the aunts of the family who lived here, she was very much into spiritualism, and there's actually pictures of her with Houdini. She was a very close personal friend of Harry Houdini.
That was big in Victorian times.
Yeah,
What they did for entertainment.
right, yeah, and she actually brought him, the rumor is, I haven't looked up the newspaper story, so I don't know if it's true or not, but apparently she went to New York several times, and it's possible that he actually came here one time. She lived over on the Benninghofen house at 8th and Dayton. So her dad was Christian, the oldest son here. She got very big into spiritualism, but yeah. Ghost Bros, yes. Yeah, and they, apparently I just saw, they did Lane Public Library about a month or so ago. That's a very short one. They were there for about 3 hours, and they basically kind of said there really wasn't anything. I think their video of that place is less than 10 minutes or about 10 to 12. But then I just saw that they had posted that they were over in the municipal building. And I've been over there, and we had several things in that building. The jail that's up on the fourth floor was very active. Cool setting. Yeah, they were over there as well. I have not watched that video yet, so I couldn't tell you anything about it.
Where was the Schuler house at? One time the Schuler lived on Pleasant and...
Are you talking about Asa Schuler?
I don't know.
Yeah.
He used to drive a Jaguar. That's how.
Oh, okay. I know that for a while, I think one of Asa's, so it was John Benninghofen and Asa Schuler, and then I know one of Asa Schuler's sons actually lived in German Village a while. Off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you. There was actually, I think there were actually two Schuler families. One was the woolen mill, and I think someone had something to do with something else. So I don't know off the top of my head.
Where did he live at?
He lived over on South D Street.
Is the house still there?
No, it was torn down, and but it used to be just down from the children's home.
Right next to the tracks.
Yeah,
That's what I read.
right. They used to have all the unit reunions there, even after he died. They still had them there. Yeah. Well, thank you all for coming. I appreciate it.